Test one, two, three. Okay, I think I'm just doing a quick sound check here. Make sure you guys can hear me. Okay, and then I got one more test to do here. Bear with me. Oh yeah. So as the season's starting up, I'm getting more sophisticated on what I can do here, which is really cool. So I got two cameras set up, and this is why I've been practicing just to make sure this works. So something I haven't been able to do up until today is show multiple angles and some really up close stuff. It's been mostly right here. So let me cut this out. There we go. Nice. Well, happy Saturday. I already had about a gallon of coffee. I'm just kidding. I cut back a lot this last year, but I already had my coffee, so I'm just going to be sipping on water today. If we haven't met yet, my name's Andy, the founder of MEG's Edible Landscapes. And up until basically today, I haven't had much to show because the plant nursery's been sleeping. So if you are in Minnesota and you plan on gardening this year, if you don't have seeds, I'd strongly recommend to go seed shopping. I know I've talked to a lot of people over the last week. Even I had a eye appointment yesterday to check my eyes, annual checkup, and my doctor saying her seed catalog just showed up. So we're talking about tomatoes that she's gonna be trying this year. But if you haven't gotten your seeds, I highly recommend you start shopping now. Like I said in prior weekends, if you wait till the time when everybody else starts thinking about gardening, you may miss the boat. And since 2020, when a lot of people started getting interested in gardening because there was not much else to do during the lockdowns, uh, everything has changed as far as the seed buying experience. So in the past where I only had maybe three seed vendors I'd purchase from, sometimes and like this year I have seven vendors now that I'm doing business with to get all the seed varieties that I require for my small CSA business. And that's not bad, it's an adjustment. And this is all to say that if you don't have seeds, start shopping right now because it's very possible when we get to that warm season that the seed varieties that you like or something that you want to try growing for the first time this year, it may be sold out. And this is very common with hybrids. So hybrids are specialty crops. I've talked about those in the past episodes, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. That's just one example of if there's a specific hybrid that's bred for a specific purpose, then it's very likely when we get to the warmer months when everybody starts buying seeds that it's going to be sold out. So right now is a very good time to grow seeds or buy seeds. I have all my purchases done at this point, and the exciting part about today is that I am actually going to flip to my other camera here in a couple minutes, and you can see what's growing. So we kind of have a crawl, walk, run, or at least that's how I relate the growing season here in Minnesota. It kind of falls back reminiscent of my time in the military, because that's how the army trained anyway, was the crawl, walk, run method of teaching. And it's just how I kind of relate to the plant nursery because we start off slow and then here in a month from now we're gonna have multiple trays going with multiple different plants. And then by the time May comes around, my hair is going to be literally on fire. That might be why I have a red beard. I don't know. But once May rolls around, it's super busy. I feel like the carnival um, entertainer where I'm spinning plates or juggling because that's what it feels like. I'm keeping multiple biological systems up and running and trying not to kill anything, and it's very exciting. So I've talked enough. I'm gonna flip to my other camera. I'm gonna show you some stuff. So this week I seeded all my early plants, and that's stuff that is a cool season crop. So we don't have any lettuce yet, but I seeded two different types of cabbage, two different types of broccoli, and then the rest of it's edible flowers. The edible flowers I peaked already. They haven't germinated yet, but the other greens you're gonna be able to see here in a second. So I'm gonna flip to my other camera, and then you can see that. Okay, so this. I love my high tech, low tech equipment here. If you're wondering what this is just Saran wrap. I buy that in big rolls, and then it just lays on top of here. So you can see, I get a closer shot up here. See this cabbage closest to us is red, or it's Purple Express is the name of that variety. I get that from Renee's, and then the variety right next to it is Pixie, and then you can see over here there's broccoli right here. The rest of these are nasturtiums and some edible flowers, so not a whole lot yet, but this is what broccoli and cabbage look like, and they just germinated or sprouted to where you could see the seed leaves here in the last 24 hours. So this is the exciting moment because this is where the seeds come to life. And you can see they're not all up above the surface yet, but next week when I do another live stream, you'll see the update here. And I mentioned this here a few weeks ago about when dealing with seed or buying seeds, how you can read the seed packets. They're gonna have a germination rate on or percentage. So if you ever see like uh, you might see like for that cabbage, for instance, it might say 90% germination rate. That's required by law, but then also gives you a pretty good idea of what to expect when you plant those seeds. So the point of that whole story is you always want to plant more than what you need, or expect not all of them to come back to life, and that's just normal for uh, bringing seeds back to life. They're not all going to come out of dormancy. Now, you may have heard that seeds have a long storage life, and that's true. But expect if you have 1 year old seed, so all the stuff that you see in that tray is from last year's harvest. If you save seeds, and let's say you're like 5 years, yeah, let's just say 5 years, you're pulling seeds out of your closet that have been sitting there for 5 years. Some of them will germinate, but as time goes on, less and less seeds will be viable. And the ones that do come back to life, that you'll get a crop out of them. But what I've noticed also is that the vigor is less, and they're not going to be as good of performers as newer seed. So that's not. I'm not saying like don't start seeds that have been sitting on the shelf, but don't expect them to behave like seeds that were harvested last year. Okay, so that's that. That's the first tray. Later today, I'm going to be starting onions, and these are all excluding the onions. Everything you see here in that tray right there, that's all cool season crops. So what that means is that 40 degrees, that's their minimum threshold. So 40 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the threshold. What that means is that if it's 38 degrees outside, and let's say we had that plant going outside right now, or let's say here in the nursery, it's currently 65 degrees here, and it's gonna be a little bit warmer because I got the grow lights going right now, but that's my that's my little temperature humidity gauge right there. But let's say it's below 40 degrees in here, those plants wouldn't do anything. They would just sit and idle. So that's a good rule of thumb to know is that 40 degrees is the minimum threshold. If it's below that, all cool season crops, they will not, they're just going to sit there and idle in place. They need the temperature. So that's one of the legs of the stool that plants need is they need temperature to be above their minimum threshold. So 40 degrees Fahrenheit for the cool season crops. And then if you're wondering about warm season plants, we're going to get that to that later next month. and those haven't been started yet. So I don't start my tomatoes and peppers until mid-March. So we still got a couple weeks before uh, that spools up. But for warm season plants, 50 degrees Fahrenheit is the threshold. And you may have even seen that on a seed packet if you look at like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, definitely, even herbs like basil. 50 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the minimum threshold. If it's below that, they're going to sit and idle. And also, too, one of the challenges with growing in a climate like Minnesota is that we can definitely get cool swings after we're supposed to be warm. So, so that's just one of the challenge. But what I'm saying is, I had mentioned this a couple weekends ago too, is that like with basil, if it drops below 40 degrees, you're actually going to see some damage on the leaves of that plant, and that's not always good. All right, I'm gonna put this over here, and then we'll bring this back so you can see me. All right, nice. Okay, we're back. All right, besides the cool season plants that I have over here, I also got a strawberry plant, which I'm not sure if you saw that. I'm gonna grab my phone and bring it over so you can see it up close. Uh, this strawberry is called All Star, and I brought it out of dormancy about a month and a half ago. So let me go grab my phone. Okay, all right, and I got a ladybug on there too, which is kind of cool. We live out in acreage, so uh, it's it's common to see ladybugs in here. But this is a all-star strawberry plant. It's been going for I think a month and a half now. But the cool thing about this is you can already see. Look at that. I'm trying to get this so you can see the fruit down there. This is the first strawberry on there. Yep, there you go. So month and a half under grow lights for this strawberry plant. If you've ever wondered if you can grow strawberries inside, you can. So that's the first one. And with strawberries, typically the first fruits are going to be the largest. So we got other flowers on here already. There's actually quite a few. So there's another one developing a fruit. That's small. There's another one. All right, this one right here is interesting. The larger fruit that you see on there, I hand pollinated that. But this one right here, I did not. So you can see the difference how it's kind of misshapen where my thumb is. That that's an indication of poor pollination. So if we had bees in there, which I'm not gonna unleash bees in my house, but if I had bees in here, they'd be rolling around on these flowers and helping me pollinate them. Um, but if you do grow fruit inside the house like this, if you don't pollinate them, just expect them to have misshapen fruit. Um, or you can use a Q-tip or a small paintbrush, or I've seen probably no less than a dozen different methods for hand pollinating. It's all documented on YouTube. So, but anyway, this is called All-Star strawberry plant. If you're kind of wondering about these leaves right here, these look kind of. This is probably my favorite part is just seeing the cool colors. Like I love different colors, right? Uh, but like something like this, I don't freak out about something like this. And these are the oldest leaves on this plant. So this plant got below freezing when it went to sleep last fall. It wasn't super cold or it wasn't exposed to extreme Minnesota temperatures, but it was cold enough to where a lot of the leafy vegetation above the soil surface in this grow bag was killed off. except for like this one. So this one and the one on the other side, those were the first couple leaves that were still on there, and they started coming back to life. But if you're wondering why they look like this, that's because those are from last year's leaves. And then these one right here, you can see the new leaves are starting to open up on top of it. And this plant is really starting to crank out too. So um, yeah, that's exciting. Lots of flowers. Okay. Okay, so that's the strawberry show and tell. The first seed tray show and tell. And then I got one other thing to show you today, and then I gotta make this short because I this isn't the time of the year when I'm making a lot of sales calls to last year's customers and then onboarding new customers. So it's just a very busy time of the year. So anyway, the last thing I want to show you was a fan. If you're gonna grow or start seeds inside, you can see that right there. I highly recommend a fan. It doesn't have to be a fancy fan. It doesn't have to be an oscillating fan. But if you don't have a fan, you run the risk of causing major disruptions and problems with your seedlings. So this point in time with the seedlings that you see in this tray, that's that's one of the most critical times in that plant's life. There's a lot of stuff going on. It just came up out of dormancy. It's just waking up. It hasn't started to fully photosynthesize yet. If we didn't have a fan here and I had like a massive excess amount of moisture here, you've probably heard about this before. You can get diseases, and it's totally true. And the first time you experience where you've lost multiple plants at that stage, you're gonna learn that the advice about making sure there's gentle airflow over the plants, that was valuable advice. So I'm telling you right now, so you don't repeat my pain. um, Learn from my past is that just do yourself a favor. It doesn't have to be a fancy fan. So I think this fan right here, I picked it up at a local hardware store for, I don't know, I think it's like $15. I'm sure there's ones that are even uh, less than that on Amazon, but you need some type of fan to blow gently over the seedlings when they're at this stage. That just cuts down on the excess moisture at the soil surface. I I think you could see it, but at the bottom of that tray right there, there's a well, the bottom of the seedling rack, there's a tray. I started this years ago too. I used to top water all the seedlings. I think that's just probably a natural ebb and flow of the learning curve. But I do all bottom watering for seedlings at this stage now. So I'll water the soil mix when I first start it, plant the seeds, cover them, and then I add water to the bottom tray only. As long as the soil mixture, I'm saying soil, it's really soilless. There's actually no garden soil in there, but as long as that's sufficiently moist, then I'd never add water to the top of the soil again. And it, like I said, it just comes from history and the techniques I've developed, learning from other people that have more knowledge than me, and then trying to diminish the risk of losing seedlings because there's nothing that frustrates me more than all the work that I do, or maybe you've had this experience too, where you spend a lot of time and energy developing these plants and it gets to the point where and then you suddenly lose the crop because of something silly like not having enough airflow over them to dry out the soil surface. And we don't have to have a ton of air blowing across this, but we need to have a sufficient air that's moving. So you just don't want stagnant air, especially when we're adding other things like these grow lights right here. These grow lights right here, they do put out some heat. So with the T5s here that I have, there's a lot more heat here So with the heat and the moisture, you can see where this is going. So as long as we keep the air flowing over the surface of where those seedlings are, that's going to set us up for success in the long run. I have LEDs, which I'll show here next month when I get the warm season plants going. And there's a ton of benefits to having LEDs. They don't put as much heat as these T5 fluorescents. So that's just a difference that I've learned is the T5s put out a lot more heat, not a ton of heat, but they definitely do put out a lot of heat. And in years past, I've used that to my advantage. So in Minnesota, as long as my insulated shop stays above 40 degrees at night, that's usually where I keep it, then there's enough heat output from these T5s that it simulates daytime temperatures. So we'll get about 20 degrees warmer at the soil surface where those plants are actively growing just from the heat output from the T5s. I don't have to use any supplemented heat in that shop, which is pretty cool. But like I said, with the LEDs that I've grown out there too, they don't put out as much heat, so I I don't have that lever to pull, so to speak. But anyway, that's it for this weekend. New seedlings sprouted, all the cool season crops, the strawberry update. If you're gonna start plants or start seeds, definitely invest in a fan and then buy your seeds. Buy your seeds if you haven't yet. Anyway, look forward to growing with you this summer. And until next weekend,